Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Annie News. We've got another cut content video for DanMachi Season 3, and we're checking out what was changed in Episode 2, and we're just going to get straight into it. Really intrigued.
There weren't very many significant changes to Episode 2.
Oh.
If anything, this was one
Fair
of the
enough.
better adapted episodes from the season so far.
Well, that's decent.
So, naturally, this video will be a bit shorter than others,
That's
since it'll mainly
alright.
cover dialogue cuts and minor character development. In any case, let's do as we usually do and take a look at what the anime left out from the novels. Let's begin.
Intriguing.
Episode 2, Monster, covering chapters 2 to 3 of Volume 9 of the light novel.
Okay.
Just as how the episode began, we start things off by getting our first look at the main antagonist, Dixon.
I can't wait for him to
In the anime, though,
become a
there
problem.
was actually some basis behind sending out his crew to go and look for Wiene.
He isn't doing much, but he seems intriguing.
The kill for himself was reason enough to believe that she was still out there. You see, news of that sort of thing tended to travel fairly quickly.
But
so
no one's hearing
had
anything.
Wiene been killed by another adventurer, then that was something that they definitely would have heard about.
Yeah.
Of course, there was always the possibility that she was captured by those with a monster fetish, in which case her being taken captive in secrecy wasn't all that unrealistic.
Oh, right,
That's
okay.
why he wanted to find out who was around at the time of her disappearance.
Right.
When we switch over to the morning at the Hestia mansion, Hephaestus, Miyake, and Takema Kazuchi were all currently visiting to see Wiene with their own eyes.
All at the same time.
Each following up after with their own bit of insight.
Hmm.
The general consensus was to go and ask the guild. If anywhere in Arario was to have more information, then that was the only place that anyone could think of.
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
trusting the guild was easier said than done. It was more than likely that they already knew the circumstances of the situation. So the issue was figuring out why they were trying to hide it. That was something Hephaestus volunteered to look into. Once they decided to search for answers in the dungeon, Val never actually intended to ask the youth for help. He was only stopping by the tavern so he could pick up lunch from Sidu.
Oh, wow, he wasn't
It was
actually being...
only after they
okay.
arrived that Lily forced him to ask her for help, the majority of which was very similar to the novel.
Let's fight, Tofo, our man. There we go. Man fights versus, go.
Instead, they went and bought a completely new set of gear just so that they could save a bit of time. Aisha's purchase of a greatsword much bigger than what she typically uses drew quite a bit of attention from both Wealth and Lily. It spurred Lily to ask a couple of questions regarding her level and familia. As it turns out, after the Ishtar Familia's destruction, Aisha had gone through the conversion process and switched familias.
Oh!
She refused to say what familia
She was
converted
with.
to.
Right, interesting,
Instead,
okay.
she mentioned how in the month that's passed since her fight with Mel, she was able to go up to level 4. Which
So
was
she
very
switched, but
effective
still
to
leveling
highlight
up,
her
right, okay.
skills in battle.
Interesting.
As for Liu, she made sure not to wear an outfit similar to what she wore in the war games.
Yeah,
Mostly
that's
because
cool,
she
the
didn't
mask
want
and
to
that, it's cool.
attract any unnecessary attention. She also
Don't want
didn't
people to know
buy
who she
any
is.
weapons like how Aisha did. Instead, she used a pair of short swords that she always carried with her.
Huh.
Now, when it got to
Short
the point where Mel
swords
had
were
to
like,
fight,
nice.
he was actually
I'm joking
going up
again.
against the rabbit monsters known as Almarar.
Rabbits!
And the reason he hesitated was because he saw the reflection of himself in their eyes. Although it may not have been clear before, it was now very apparent that the time Belle was spending with Wiene was directly influencing him.
It
As
does
he
seem
thought
that
about
way.
it some more,
He's looking
he
at things
realized that
differently
hadn't
now, isn't he?
attacked a single monster the entire time. He'd just been letting everyone else deal with them instead.
Yeah.
His thoughts were clouded by the possibility of encountering another monster like Wiene.
Similar.
So
Yeah, it doesn't
he'd
want
been
to be
subconsciously
killing
avoiding
something that
any monsters that they
can
came
walk and
across.
talk and act like a
Although
human.
he knew it was a very dangerous mindset to have, he simply couldn't seem to shake it from his head. In any case, the descent to the 18th floor only ended up taking 3 hours. The reason why
Not
Aisha
bad going,
and
team.
Lily didn't
Not bad
mind
going.
Mel's business after was mainly because their quest didn't involve it. It was basic adventurer etiquette to only be responsible for their mission and nothing else. So, in this case, their mission was to escort Belle to the 18th floor.
And that's it.
Anything after that wasn't their concern.
Yeah, so
So, as Belle
Don't
and
ask what
Wealth
they're doing
traversed
afterwards, yeah.
the unknown territory of the 19th floor, both were very much on edge with their surroundings. Not only were they under-leveled and undermanned for the floor they were on, but the monsters of this floor were also capable of inflicting status effects.
Oh.
So, getting into any sort of prolonged battle would have resulted in a very dire situation, which is why they actively avoided any sort of conflict.
makes sense.
That said, Wealth did have one of his magic swords just in case they happened to get overwhelmed.
Handy.
There was a moment where they got swarmed by these dragonfly-looking monsters, but Belle was able to take care of them pretty easily after casting aside his own problems. When they eventually came across Ray disguised as a hooded adventurer, Ray initially assumed Belle and Welf to be the same adventurers that were capturing her kin.
Oh.
It was as she accused them of such that a very intense bloodlust could be felt coming from her.
Right, so
Her
she
voice no longer
thinks they
sounded
are
human,
bad guys at
and
this time.
her urge to kill gave off a sinister aura that Belle had never experienced before. It was only after she realized that they were potential allies that she decided to tone back her hostile demeanor.
Right.
Leading to the rest of the conversation like how we saw in the anime.
Oh, right, so there's
What the
bits...
anime
Right,
didn't show
okay,
after,
of course,
though,
there's
was
bits
how
messed
this
out. This whole
chance
thing's
encounter
covering
had
it.
totally shocked both Belle and Welf. It was such an unexpected experience that neither Belle nor Welf could focus on gathering any information anymore. That's why they decided to return back to the surface. Now, when Belle had his run-in with Nikolos, he initially believed this strange god to be another one of the many that were trying to recruit him to their familia.
Oh.
You see, it wasn't uncommon
Everyone
for
wants
Belle
him.
to be approached
Everyone
by
wants a bit of
deities
Belle.
around Mario, especially after having leveled up so much. So Belle felt that this was just another one of those times.
Yeah.
Of course, that feeling quickly changed when the topic of Wiene came up. As we saw, though, luckily Hermes was able to intervene.
Hermes is always there to back him up with a god situation.
After that, we got a bit more context behind his overall investigation. The first suspicious thing he found was an empty home. There wasn't anything or anyone to be found at the place where Ikolos's familia was supposed to live.
Oh.
Ikolos made up the excuse that he had moved out, but normally that was something that you needed to tell the guild before you
Something got a file,
The
right.
second
And it's not on
suspicious thing
file,
was a
so
direct
what's going
statement
on?
from an Illyrian noble.
Pretty sus.
When Hermes sent his familia to investigate the smuggling ring outside of Arario, some of the Illyrian royalty was able to confirm the Ikolos familia's involvement. But that didn't really seem to matter, since Ikolos wasn't even trying to deny it. If anything, this was just intended to show how Hermes was able to track him down.
Everyone's always following someone in DanMachi. I say it time and time again. Corridors of one, corridors of shadows.
The only rule she had was to not leave the inner garden. But as she sat
Back
idly
alleys
waiting
and
for
back
Haruhi
alleys
to
of
find her,
shadows.
thoughts of Belle slowly crept into her mind.
Oh,
She couldn't help but wonder when he was going to come home.
poor Wiene.
Sure, Haruhime had been by her side the entire day, but without Belle, things just felt lonely. I mean, he was, after all, her shining beacon of hope.
Bless.
So, her loneliness quickly turned to anxiety as she desired to be with Belle, much like how a young child wanted to be with their parents. That's when she looked up and spotted Belle's room on the 3rd floor of the manor. At first, she was hesitant to break the rules and leave the garden, but Wiene really wanted to be closer to Belle. So, she honed in on his scent and followed its tracks all the way up to his room. As we saw, this was around the same time that Lily and Welf returned from the dungeon.
Ah.
Because Wiene was supposed to be in the gardens, no one expected her to be in the room across from them when they were discussing what they found.
Makes sense.
When it came to the topic of letting Wiene go, Lily actually brought up some very valid points that weren't shown in the anime. For starters, it didn't help that the Hermes Familia was hired to investigate something that they were now deeply involved in. That meant it was only a matter of time
Before someone finds out.
Be revealed to the public.
Yeah.
Once that time came, Lily knew it would be impossible to convince a city full of adventurers that they'd managed to coexist with a monster.
Yeah, no way is that
Even
going to happen. Yeah,
convincing
like,
them that
bloody
they'd
hell,
take
when it
one
actually...
would be difficult since there wasn't a single monster
All
to
those
keep them
people
feeling.
go mental.
What's worse, Wiene's attractive appearance would only make others think that something else was taking place.
Oh,
Making this the third
right.
instance of the topic of monster fetishists. A topic that seems to have been avoided in the anime in order to tone things down a bit.
Yeah, they are not
Anyways,
touching on that
the
at
main
all.
essence
I
of
get
what
that.
Lily was saying
I get
remained the
that.
same. Any familia who found out about Wiene's existence would most likely use that opportunity to destroy the reputation of the Hestia familia. Although everyone knew what Lily was saying was correct, Hestia felt that it was a little bit too early to be thinking that way. Bringing us to the moment when they hear Wiene leave. Because Mikoto was the first to notice, she immediately tried to use one of her skills to locate her.
Oh,
This was one of her innate abilities that worked similar to a radar. It allowed her to detect
Bing.
enemies or familia members within a certain range.
that's decent.
But because she was thrown into such a stressful situation, the nerves she was feeling at the time were affecting her ability to use it, making her unable to properly locate Wiene. When Belle finally arrived home to find out what happened, it wasn't just Hestia waiting for him, but instead the entire familia. Haruhime was in tears as she apologized for letting Wiene out of her sight. Mikoto was saying how she was unable to track her with her skill, and Lily could be seen behind everyone else clenching her fists out of frustration. It was immediately after hearing what happened that Belle took Mikoto to go and search the city. Everyone else, including Hestia, went their separate ways in order to cover more ground. Switching back to Wiene, there was a single reason behind why she decided to help this child. The only thing she could think of when she saw what was about to happen was the pain that it would cause.
Yeah,
She knew
like,
the child would end up
they're gonna go
hurt
through
if she
pain.
didn't do anything. And this reminded her of how much she cried whenever she got hurt.
Oh.
It was as she saw this child's expression of fear that Wiene remembered the time when her life was in danger. This made her body move as if on its own. She reacted so quickly that it almost looked as if she'd teleported. But
on the
that
wing.
instinct to react was also what triggered the growth in her body.
Yeah.
It set off a chain reaction that caused her body to evolve. Now,
And then everyone freaks the hell out.
Regular citizens, there were also quite a few deities that got to witness the spectacle as well.
Oh.
Many climbed onto the rooftops to get a better view of what was happening. Some cowered in fear for their safety, but most considered it to be a fascinating show. To them, this was just a miniature version of the eternal struggle between men and monsters. Thanks to the escalating commotion, Bell managed to overhear someone scream out the location of a monster. So he immediately ran faster than he'd ever run before, following the increasing sounds of panic before eventually...
And then they start throwing stuff at her and it's horrible. It's like,
oh... pretty much the same up until they got to the basement. It was here that we got a better understanding of the futility of the situation. Everyone now knew that it was practically impossible to broker peace between man and monster.
No one's on board with that, no.
Too much fear. I mean, there was, after all, a time when the people of the surface found themselves helpless to resist the invasions of the monsters. So, this deeply rooted hatred was one that went all the way back to before Arario even existed.
Damn.
It was a fear passed on from the ancient times. One that was so ingrained into the people of the world that to attempt to dispel such a thing was a very naive idea to begin with. That's why Bell couldn't say that everything was going to be okay. No matter how much he wanted to, he knew now that it was impossible to think that Wiene could be with them. And because of that, he wasn't going to lie to her. Bringing us to the end of episode 2. So, clearly there wasn't very much left out from this episode.
There's still some stuff though,
Unfortunately, I
jeez.
can't say the same for episode 3 though. And since I'm trying to catch up to where the anime is, episode 3 and 4 will have to be combined together.
Nice.
So be sure to keep an eye out for that one and a new lore video sometime next week.
Sweet.
But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Awesome. Love it. So if you're doing 2 in the next one, that's going to be boss. Then he's going to be catching up and I love it. Love seeing what the differences are. Like I said, not much, but that was still pretty decent to see. So, until next time, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys, all you guys,